Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Stash Report from the Stash Project. Today is March 3rd, 2017, and we got a little bit of a show for you here. We got a couple of kit announcements, some product previews, as well as the few kit releases that have come out of Japan right at the end of February, beginning of March. Otherwise, it's a slow time of the month, as it usually is the beginning of the week. We just put out our March compilation video yesterday, so you haven't had a chance to go watch that, check it out, so you know what you need to be spending your money on for the month of March. And let's just jump right on into it here. We got a couple of additional kit announcements, or I should say reissue announcements, for Aoshima for the month of April, and they are going to be reissuing the Knight Rider kit, Pontiac Firebird, for Season 1 and Season 4. So those two kits will get another reissue. And Hasegawa announced that for April they will be reissuing their 1992 Lancia Super Delta rally car. This will be a Martini livery and represents the car that is the World Rally Championship Makers Champion. Basically won the Car Manufacturers Championship for the 1992 rally season. That is a kit that was released, or reissued, I should say, not that long ago, sometime in the last, I want to say, 6 to 8 months when they were doing a lot of their rally reissues. And this is just sort of a restock reissue. It had sort of sold out over the course of the last couple of months while they were, especially after they did their reissue of the Lancia Delta Integral 16 valve. That got a bunch of decals for created for it, both from Studio 27 and Shunko decals towards the end of February. That's pretty much what your February decals were. There were the police stuff from Dubai, and then the end of the month stuff was all Delta Integral decals for various rallies. So still cashing in on those rally bucks because they're still rolling in, so you can't blame them for that. So that takes us over to, like I said, some product placement here, some product development news. In this photo here, you see some kits from Ebro. I'm not exactly sure where Jeff Brown, UK-based modeler, found this picture. If this is from Nuremberg Toy Fair and we didn't see it, or if this is something more recent. But you can see that yellow Citroen HY that's poking out of the right side of the picture there. That is, of course, the Crepe Mobile type, or the Crepe Mobile. Now, I have seen a picture of this kit built up, and it does appear that it will be the kit that has the opening side awning and things like that for the mobile kitchen. It is not that blue one that you see down the bottom right, but it appears that it has the same sort of things, only geared towards that the mobile crepe kitchen, as it were. So I'm going to keep an eye out on that and see if that really is the case, if it really does have all of that mobile food kitchen stuff. But what we're focusing on here are those two Citroen DSs at the front center of the cabinet. The black and white one in the back is the DS19. That's a kit that's been out for almost 2 years now. But you'll notice the blue car and the silver car are, in fact, DS21s. Those are the sort of, not really the third generation of the DS, but the third variation of the DS that garnered the car the twin beam headlights with the polycarbonate headlight cover. Might not have been polycarbonate, but it has a composite headlight cover that, if you're going to build a US spec version of the DS21, because it was a car that was imported to the United States, you're going to have to take that cover off and just run the seal beam headlamps. I think there's a couple of very, very minor trim and perhaps interior differences between the 19 and the 21, but this is a continuation of that tool. Also, in one of those I could tell you, but I have to kill you kind of things, that it's not going to be the final variation of the DS tooling. There will be further kits coming out of that. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a 2017 type of thing, but in the future there will be further variations, and when I can finally tell you guys for sure about them, I think you'll be excited in the terms of what that future variation will be. Moving on to Bell kits, they showed these photos this week. These are the first round test shots of the Opel Manta Group B rally car. And I see there are going to be two kits of this, as we talked about in the past. One is going to have the twin seal beams, and the other one is going to have the composite single beam headlight. I find it's very interesting that the car that's sort of all built up has a left-hand drive dashboard, but what will be considered to be right-hand drive wipers. They're wiping the wrong direction for a left-hand drive car. I don't know if that's an Opel Manta thing, that the windshield wipers are just mounted that way, but usually, the sweep is towards the driver's, door rather than away from it like that. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a left-hand drive and a right-hand drive component to this. Uh, Obviously, one car also has night racing lights that the other one is not sporting. I believe that the night racing lights will probably be available in both kits. It looks like there's actually either 2 or 3 sets of wheels to this kit as well, because the one that's completely built is sort of riding sort of a steel wheel, and obviously there are like a 5-spoke wheel being shown next to the other bodies. So again, very first round test shots, many variations, many tooling changes. I'm sure that will be coming in the future, as it is March, and Belkit's saying that this kit is probably like a third quarter, early fourth quarter release. So still some time to go on cooking it, so to speak, in terms of perfecting the design. Playmos, a number of things here from Playmos. This first one is going to be a wheel that I'm not totally sure this is going to be public consumption or just something he's working on for himself, but this is a wheel that will go with the AMT 1967 Shelby GT500. So there'd be a variation of the wheel for that. And then what you're going to see here are the wheels and the tire and wheel. I don't know necessarily sure if the tires are going to come with it or not, but the wheel sets here for the Dodge Challenger Hellcat Trans kit. Now, we've talked about that, being a thing that's coming, as it were. However, it's wasn't something that necessarily was presenting itself in designs. We're seeing a lot of the Z28 because that's going to come out first. So these are really some of the first renderings of the Hellcat. Again, just starting off on the brakes and the wheels here, and they are going to be the front wheel front brakes and rear wheel rear brakes, is the way that I showed them to you. So that's what that is there. So that's I don't necessarily know if it's exciting per se, but it is certainly progress in the terms of getting to see that. And then lastly, in the product development thing here are this hobby cat. It says good morning to everyone, as you probably can hear. The development of some Gia Race of Macau BMW E30 M3 decals. There's going to be 7 sets here. I'm not sure if all the Hiltons are going to be on one sheet or not. I haven't actually talked to them about that. But what you're seeing here are 3 variations of the Hilton decals running 87, 88, and 89, or I should say 2 87s and an 88. The 89, of course, the Kamachi BMW team. The 90 being the Mr. Juicy team, which is great because, like we said, that just sounds like a very, very creepy, orange juice purveyor to small children, perhaps. I don't know. And then the 92 car is the Mobil 1 livery. That is the winning car for the race in 1991. And then the 1993 car is kind of interesting in its own right, because this Pro AC AudioQuest car was driven by Charles Kwan, very famous Hong Kong, Macau race driver. I don't think he's driving any of the other cars in this sets, because these are mostly Emmanuel Piero cars, but he also drove in pretty much every year of the Gia Race Macau, especially during this era, actually going back all the way into the early 1980s, because there are cars he drove for the Volvo 240 Group A car that BMAX will be doing at some point in the 2017 season, as it were. And the reason why this is interesting is in 1993, BMW had gone past the M3. The E30 M3, of course, didn't exist. 92 was the last year it was made. So in 1993, BMW's factory teams were driving 318i's in the Gia Race of Macau. You guys may recall I built the Watson's version of that kit last year. But there was still sort of a lower tier division of the Gia Race of Macau. And in 1993, that lower division was still running the earlier M3s, and Charles Kwan won that lower division version of the race in this car. So it's kind of an interesting uh, car in the sense of it being run after factory support was over. And plus, hey man, it's got Video Magic Laser Disc Specialists on the side of it. I mean, there's a great, very period sponsorship if ever there was one. And that takes us to the kit releases for this week. Again, it's a fairly light week, but there was some stuff that came out after the last video we did over at Aoshima. The one modified retooling that came out, and that is taking the Scion FRS Toyota 86 tool and adding about, say, 20-25 newly tooled parts to convert it into the 2016 GT Limited 86. This does come with left-hand drive and the engine, so that you can make the current North American Toyota 86, as well as the continue to make the Euro Spec 86, as well as the JDM 86. We get new bumpers, new wheels, there's a new steering wheel, there's new fender tags, the new front and back bumpers required new headlights, new taillights, new glass, and all that sort of thing. So there are a number of pieces here to tool it into the current body style and the 2016 model year. And then some reissues that we had told you were coming because these things had sold out of their initial run in December, and they are, of course, the Pangani Warrior, as well as the first 4 of the 14-inch wheel sets. You recall there are going to be 4 additional 14-inch wheel sets coming out in March. These are the ones from December. They are the HAYASHI, the Star Sharks, the Longchamp XR4s, and the Yayoi wheels. So those are going to be back in stock at your favorite vendor. And that'll take us to Fujimi, who had a couple of releases here since the last video. A reissue, and this is a March kit that just came out today on Friday, and that is a reissue of the Nissan Skyline R34 25 GT Turbo from 1998. This is basically as close as you can get to having a GTR without actually having a GTR. The 25 GT Turbos were all-wheel drive. They just weren't quite all the way a GTR. This is a very basic kit in the sense that it rides that weird rear-wheel drive chassis that Fujimi put underneath all of their GTRs, regardless of whether or not they were all-wheel drive. Of course, your new GTRs are all-wheel drive, but they created one chassis and put it underneath everything. The interior is very basic on it as well. However, for the Skyline collector, the Skyline builder, if you want to build, that right up to the, but not quite an R34, this is, of course, your option. It's also, to me at least, a better kit than the actual R34 that Fujimi did, which was a snap-tight kit and is very, very basic and like less than 40 parts kind of basic. There were a number of these actual 25 GT kits. There's this one. There's an Aero package, which got reissued probably 2.5, 3 years ago now. There was also like just a 25 GT Turbo, or maybe it was just a Skyline 25 GT at that point without the turbo. It's a little bit different, less aggressive, different front grille. And then there was a Nismo version of this. It'd be interesting to get either the base factory GT, 25 GT, or that Nismo kit back, rather than having this sort of same kit get reissued before. Because again, this is probably 3 years, 2.5 years since it was reissued last, but still, it's not a hard kit to find. It's not a very expensive kit. It's probably like $15, $17. So, again, for the Skyline collector, that's coming back out. And then finally, after an initial November release date and then kept skidding backwards, on March 1st, we got the brand new tool, Toyota Velfire. This is the Alford van with its more younger counterpart design, if you will. This is similar to the way the Toyota Crown Royal Saloon and Crown Athlete are the same but different cars. The Crown Royal Saloon is a hybrid electric 4-cylinder. The hybrid electric, sort of augments the 4-cylinder. Very luxurious, aimed at the older executive. And the Crown Athlete is still running a V6. It's more sporty looking. It is faster in general terms, and it's just, aimed at sort of the late 30s, early 40s, executive. Well, this is the same thing. This is Toyota's full size van. There is the Alphard, which is a more stuffy, conservative, van, and then there's the Velfire, which of course is again more aggressive. I don't know if you could say more sporty because I believe it has the same engine in both vans. However, obviously it's a more aggressively designed, more sporty design, again aimed at the younger consumer who still needs, of course, a 8-passenger full-size van. This falls into the Fujimi next generation tooling. This is really the first one of the first kit they've done that is a next generation. There have been, I think, four kits altogether in the next gen kit things, which the design was to include like Mylar stickers for the window black and for the interior colors, basically molded in color. Use snap tight kits where they could because the R34 Skyline is the GTR is in that series, and that is the snap tight kit. This Velfire and the Alphard, there's going to be another version. They're going to make that more stoic, conservative version of the van as well. Are snap tight kits. They are molded in color. This is molded in black, while the box art is black. And the interior is molded in gray. And so the design is you don't have to paint it, and you don't have to glue it. It's all snap tight. But the real sort of next generation thing about this is they're giving you what it basically amounts to a core. This is kind of Lego-esque in the way it builds. It's modular. You get the center core piece, which has like the doors engraved into it, but has no front end, no back end, and no roof. The roof is actually a separate piece in this because the roof on the Alphard is slightly different. The front and the rear fascias are, again, a much different design. The Alphard is a much more, again, conservative design. This is obviously much more sporty. There are separate side skirts because these, again, are more sporty. And you sort of build it, like I said, it's almost like a Lego. You put the front fenders and the hood and are separate, as well as the back actual, like the back gate is separate. And you just sort of snap it all together. Now, of course, what really will sink or swim the whole design concept is how well all these pieces fit together. Because again, you're molding the front fenders as separate pieces. You're molding the back hatch as a separate piece. The hood is a separate piece. The front bumper is like 6 pieces. The grill area is another 2 or 3 pieces. The back window glass and taillights and rear wiper and stuff like that is all molded separately. Again, designed to snap together. So, again, pin and hole sizes will be very dependent. If the thing does, it's supposed to snap together and it doesn't, it's really irrelevant to a modeler of who's looking for a more serious build. But they're sort of aiming this as at an entry level modeler too. It does come with a very large sheet of press-on Mylar stickers. Not so much Mylar, but vinyl stickers. There are some Mylar because there's a lot of chrome on this that's very subtle. A lot of chrome on the sides and around the doors and the window openings and things like that. There is a very small sheet of water slide decals for the more advanced modeler. It's going to include like the front and rear Toyota logos, the Toyota logo for the steering wheel, the gauge cluster, as well as the nav screen, the license plates, and a couple of little doodads. And there are window masks included for people who do not want to use those stickers for the window black, so you can put the window masks on from the inside and paint the glass as you would in a normal model. The chassis on this thing seems ridiculously well detailed. This is a Fujimi trait, having really, really, really well detailed chassis on things like this. Other examples that would be like the CRZ, the Prius, all have really, really in-depth chassis engraving, and then in the interior it's usually a fiasco. And while I can't speak to the side panels on this because it's not exactly clear from the photos how much engraving like the door cards, if you will, have, it does have that Fujimi trait of having all of the seat bottoms molded to the floor. I don't understand why they do that. I guess it must save a nickel or a dime here and there of having that done that way, but it's just one of those things where if you're going to paint the seats a different color than the floor, you have to really you're taping things off. It just makes painting more difficult. If you've watched Tom over the Scale Modeling channel, he just did the 430, and that has the same problems. The F12 Ferrari, it's a very, very nice kit, except again, the seat are molded to the floor. And I just don't understand that whole concept. It just baffles me, as a builder, is why that's done. But they do it in everything, so it's a design thing, and it must, do something for them. I don't know what it is, but this is very cool to have an up-to-date van. The last time the vans were done, when Fujimi did the Alfred and the Eglin, or the Elgrand, was in the mid 2000s. So it's kind of cool to have a modern van. The closest thing, I guess, the closest thing to a modern van we have is the 2010 Toyota HAYASHI, which is a slightly smaller van. Again, it's a full-size van, but it's a different different body style van. So anyway, guys, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week. Like I said, it's not a lot going on, but the things that went on: new tool, really heavily modified tool in the case of the 86. And we trudge on in through March to see what else is going to happen. Right now we're looking for, of course, the March decal. From Studio 27. That announcement should come next week. I found it very interesting that Aoshima did not announce for May yet. They have been announcing 2 months in advance, basically, for the Tune model car and the model car and the Tune parts series, but they have not announced for May yet. I believe that they're not waiting on anything in the sense of like the Shizuoka Hobby Show. The Shizuoka Hobby Show will be in May as well, but of course those announcements, which will be the Diablo GTR race car plus whatever else, those are for the second quarter, June, July, August, and into the early fall. So what exactly are they going to do in May? I mean, we've gotten sort of an interesting blend so far. The 14-inch wheel sets are very popular with builders. That's why obviously they're doing a second 14-inch sets this month in March. And then you have things like the Delica Space Wagon, which is a reissue of a kit that has been out of production for a really long time, and the Impulse 731S, which was an old kit from the 1980s that they tooled, probably 10, 15 parts into to make this new sort of kit. So what are we going to get for March or for May, and as well as June, because both those months will be, sort of before the Shizuoka Hobby Show. Stuff would really come into effect. And then the other thing that we're sort of interestingly waiting on is the second quarter Revell release flyer. And I'm going to posit to you that I don't think there's going to be one. Because at this point, we're in March, and we have gotten 2 kits out of the 2017 first quarter flyer. Because remember, January's kit was the Black Widow Chevy 150, which, amusingly and ironically, was immediately pulled like a week after it was released because the first run of production over there accidentally had the side inserts for the Bel Air hardtop stuck into it. So instead of a 150 body, you got the Bel Air body by accident. That's been solved now, and Revell has shipped, the next set out that has the correct body. And if you happen to have the new reissue 150, you might want to check on that if you're not quite sure what body you have, because if you want the replacement correct body from Revell, you got to get a hold of them early in the process, or else you're going to be like, well, we fixed that issue, and you're just trying to scam us for a body kind of thing. And then this in February you have the Grim Reaper thing from the 1/8 chopper thing from Monogram Revell, and then this month is the retool of the pickup trucks for the 66 Suburban. That leaves the RX-7, the Yanko Corvette, the Foose pickup truck, and probably a couple of other things in there in kits that are going to be delayed into April and May. Well, June is the beginning of the third quarter, so, or I should say June is the end of the third quarter. July is the beginning of the third quarter. So, is there going to be a second quarter? At this point, I don't think there is going to be one. I think they're too far behind. This is sort of like 2015, where there was no fourth quarter because they were behind. It's kind of sad to see in the sense that Revell managed to get out every kit, with the exception of the Black Widow 150, on time throughout the entire 2016 year. And you had several new tools in there. Aside from the Build and Plague 4GT, you had the Fast and the Furious 70 Charger, the 83 Hurst Olds, and the Bronco. Those were all new toolkits in 2016, as well as the 34 before all of the fiasco that involved that. That was, an early 2016 kit, and they still managed to get all that stuff out on time. And then they didn't. All of a sudden, the wheels fell off this beginning of this year, and I don't know why. There's no real rhyme or reason behind it. Perhaps they didn't get things out ahead of Chinese New Year, and now they're backlogged because of it. I mean, we've talked about the fact that Habaco didn't pay out their employee stock ownership program in 2016. There's now, and somebody pointed this out as a comment in another video, and I'm sorry I didn't take your name down to credit you with pointing this out, but I went ahead and looked, and what they said is true. The Habaco is now under a full investigation by the Department of Labor as to why they didn't pay out their ESOP, because that's not something you can just choose not to pay. I don't think that has anything to do with why Revell's kits are behind, but it's going to be kind of interesting to see going forward in 2017 where that leads, because the last thing Revell needs in a budgetary constraint, while they're trying to figure out how to get the 34 tooling back up and running with that, all that insurance claims and everything that's going on, is to have Habaco get fined by the federal government for not paying out their lump sums. So, should be an interesting year. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys